The great crystal dome of Harmony's Rest gleamed like a jewel against the stars. The massive space station floated in perfect orbit around Kepler Prime, its transparent walls revealing the vast chamber inside. Today, the chamber buzzed with tension, as representatives from 12 different alien species gathered for the most important vote in galactic history. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood alone in the center of the room. Her dark blue uniform felt heavy on her shoulders as she looked up at the curved walls where the council members sat in their elevated seats. Each species had their own section, designed for their unique needs. The Zephyrians floated in their misty chambers, their blue skin shimmering like water. The Kythera clicked and buzzed in their hive-like pods, thousands of insect voices speaking, as one. The plant-like Verdani swayed gently in their soil-filled gardens, their leaves rustling with each thought. Sarah had represented humanity in this chamber for 3 years. She had made friends here, or so she thought. She had worked hard to build trust between the human colonies and the galactic community. But now, as she looked around the room, she saw only cold faces and distant stares. Speaker Veltar of the Zephyrians rose from his floating throne. His voice echoed through the chamber like wind through crystal caves. We gather today to decide the fate of humanity's membership in the Galactic Council. The charges have been presented, the evidence has been reviewed. Now we must vote. The charges. Sarah closed her eyes and remembered the long list that had been read 3 days ago. Humanity was too aggressive. Humans built too many weapons. They refused to submit to the Council's peaceful ways. They fought back when attacked instead of seeking diplomatic solutions. They questioned authority instead of following orders. The real reason for this trial was simple. 6 months ago, the Obsidian Dominion had attacked 3 human colonies on the Outer Rim. The black ships had come without warning, enslaving the populations and strip-mining the worlds. When the humans fought back and drove them off, the Council had been horrified, not by the attack, but by the human response. Violence only breeds more violence, the Council had said. You should have negotiated. You should have found a peaceful solution. But there was no negotiating with the Dominion. Sarah had tried to explain this, but the Council would not listen. They lived in their perfect bubble of peace, protected by ancient technology and old treaties. They did not understand that some enemies could not be reasoned with. Speaker Veltar's voice cut through her thoughts. The vote will now commence. Resolution 847 Alpha calls for the immediate and permanent expulsion of humanity from the Galactic Council. All human colonies will be restricted to their home system. A containment barrier will be established around Sol to prevent further human expansion. Sarah's heart sank. A containment barrier. They were not just being expelled. They were being imprisoned. The Zephyrian Republic votes in favor of the resolution. Veltar announced. One by one, the other species cast their votes. The Kytheras, thousands of voices buzzed in unison. The collective votes in favor. The Verdani's eldest tree creaked slowly. The grove votes in favor. The crystalline shimmerers chimed their agreement. The gaseous nebulans pulsed with approval. Each vote hit Sarah like a physical blow. These were species that humanity had helped. Human doctors had cured the red plague that nearly wiped out the Verdani. Human engineers had repaired the Shimmerer, homeworld after the Great Quake. Human pilots had rescued Nebulan ships from the Void Storm. None of that mattered now. Fear had made them forget friendship. The final vote came from the aquatic depths, the whale-like creatures who spoke in deep musical tones. The depths vote in favor of the resolution. The vote is unanimous, Speaker Veltar announced. 12 votes in favor, 0 votes against. Resolution 847 Alpha is hereby approved. Humanity is expelled from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The chamber fell silent. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. She looked around at the beings she had called friends and allies. Not one of them would meet her eyes. Speaker Veltar gestured toward the speaking platform. Ambassador Chen, you may address the council one final time before you depart. Sarah walked slowly to the platform. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. When she reached the center, she turned to face the assembled council. Her voice was steady and clear. 3 years ago, I came here with hope. I believed that different species could work together for the good of all. I believed that diversity made us stronger. I was wrong, it seems. She paused, looking at each section of the council in turn. You call us aggressive because we refuse to let our people be enslaved. You call us primitive because we build weapons to defend ourselves. You call us violent because we fight back when attacked. Her voice grew stronger. But let me tell you what I see when I look at this council. I see fear. Fear of change. Fear of challenge. Fear of anyone who might question your perfect, peaceful order. Some of the council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Verdani's leaves rustled with agitation. You have made your choice, Sarah continued. You have chosen the safety of isolation over the strength of unity. You have chosen the illusion of peace over the reality of justice. Very well. Humanity will remember this day. She looked directly at Speaker Veltar. But remember this, all of you. When your perfect peace crumbles, when the threats you ignore today become too big to hide from, when your ancient protections fail you, remember that humanity offered to stand with you as allies. Instead, you chose to face what is coming alone. The chamber remained silent as Sarah turned and walked toward the exit. Her shoes clicked against the crystal floor with each step. Behind her, she could hear whispered conversations starting up, but she did not look back. At the airlock, her aide, Commander Torres, was waiting with her personal belongings. The young officer's face was grim. The ship is ready for departure. Ambassador. Thank you, Commander. Sarah took one last look at the beautiful crystal chamber where she had spent so many hours working for peace. Then she stepped through the airlock and sealed it behind her. The human transport ship New Dawn was small compared to the alien vessels docked at Harmony's Rest. It was built for function, not beauty. Angular and gray, with heavy armor plating and visible weapon mounts. Everything about it screamed human to the aliens who saw it. As Sarah strapped herself into the command chair, she activated the communication system. Harmony's Rest Control, this is the UES New Dawn requesting departure. Clearance. Clearance granted, New Dawn. Safe travels. The voice was professional but cold. The ship pulled away from the station, its engines humming with barely contained power. Through the viewports, Sarah could see the alien vessels giving them a wide berth. Even in departure, they feared humanity. Commander Torres sat down beside her. What happens now, Ambassador? Now we go home, Sarah said quietly. We warn Earth what is coming, and we prepare. As the New Dawn accelerated toward the edge of the system, Sarah watched the long-range sensors. The ancient precursor devices were already powering up. 12 massive artifacts, older than any known civilization, arranged in a perfect sphere around the Sol system. The Council had inherited them from the galaxy's previous rulers, and now they would use them as a prison. The devices activated, with a flash of brilliant light. Energy barriers sprang up between them, forming an impenetrable wall around humanity's home system. The prison was complete. Commander Torres stared at the display in amazement. Those barriers, the energy readings, are off the charts. How are we supposed to get through that? Sarah smiled grimly. We're not. That's the point. They've locked us in our cage and thrown away the key. But the colonies on the rim, the mining stations, the research outposts, all lost. Sarah confirmed. Any humans outside the Sol system when those barriers activated are on their own now. The Council will probably relocate them to safe worlds where they can be watched and controlled. The New Dawn approached the barrier at the edge of the system. The energy wall stretched away in all directions, a shimmering curtain of impossible power. As they passed through, Sarah felt a strange tingling sensation, as if the very atoms of her body were being scanned and catalogued. Then they were through, and the galaxy disappeared behind them. They were home, but home was now a prison. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, Sarah compiled her reports and prepared her briefings. She had to warn the home government about what was coming. The Obsidian Dominion would not stop with the Rim colonies. They would keep expanding, keep conquering, until someone stopped them. And the Council had just eliminated the one species willing to fight. When the New Dawn finally docked at Luna Station, Sarah was met by Admiral Harrison, the head of Human Defense Command. The old soldier's face was grave as he reviewed her reports. 12-0, he said, shaking his head. Not even one abstention. They're scared, Admiral. They've lived in peace for so long they've forgotten how to deal with real threats. The Dominion isn't some trade dispute or border disagreement. They're conquerors, slavers, and they're just getting started. Admiral Harrison nodded slowly. Then we'd better get ready. If the galaxy won't let us help them, we'll have to help ourselves. As Sarah looked out at the busy space lanes around Earth, she felt a mix of sadness and determination. Humanity was alone now, cut off from the galactic community they had tried so hard to join, but they were not helpless. They never had been. In the months that followed, the news from outside the barrier grew darker. The Obsidian Dominion continued its expansion, swallowing system after system. The Council's diplomatic protests were ignored. Their defense fleets were scattered or destroyed. The perfect peace they had fought so hard to preserve was crumbling. And inside the Sol barrier, humanity began to change. Cut off from galactic trade and support, they were forced to innovate. The restrictions that had once seemed like a death sentence became a challenge to overcome. Human scientists studied the barrier technology. Human engineers developed new weapons and ships. Human leaders planned for the day when the prison walls would fall. Because Sarah Chen had been right about one thing. The galaxy's perfect peace would not last forever. And when it finally shattered, they would need all the help they could get, even from the species they had cast out into the dark. 5 years had passed since humanity's exile from the Galactic Council. The crystal dome of Harmony's Rest looked the same as always, but the mood inside the Great Chamber was very different. Where once there had been confidence and pride, now there was worry and fear. Speaker Veltar floated in his misty chamber, his blue skin darker than usual. The report spread across his desk made for grim reading. 17 star systems had gone dark in the past 6 months. Not destroyed, not abandoned, but conquered. The Obsidian Dominion was no longer a minor threat from the Rim. They had become a plague sweeping across the galaxy. The Cathara representative buzzed nervously in their hive pod. Their mathematical models had been wrong. The Dominion was expanding, faster than any civilization in recorded history. Their black ships appeared without warning, stripped worlds of resources, enslaved populations, and moved on. No negotiations, no mercy, no survivors who were not useful. The situation is under control, Speaker Veltar announced to the assembled council, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. Our defense fleets are responding to the threat. Diplomatic channels remain open. We must not panic. But panic was exactly what many council members felt. The Verdani delegates' leaves rustled with barely contained fear. 3 of their agricultural worlds had stopped communicating last week. Long-range sensors showed only radiation signatures where thriving colonies once existed. The crystalline shimmerers chimed their concerns in harmonic frequencies. Their mining operations on the galactic edge had reported strange ship movements before falling silent. The gaseous nebulons pulsed with agitation, their cloud forms shifting colors rapidly. Only the aquatic depths remained calm, their whale-like songs deep and steady. But even they had lost contact with their research stations in the outer spiral. Arms. Perhaps, buzzed the Cathara Collective. We should reconsider our defensive strategies. The ancient protocols may not be sufficient. Speaker Veltar's form rippled with displeasure. The precursor defensive systems have protected the galaxy for 3,000 years. They will not fail us now. We simply need to activate more of them. But privately, Veltar was not so sure. The reports from the front lines were disturbing. The Dominion's technology seemed to adapt to their defenses. Energy shields that had stopped warships for millennia were being penetrated. Weapons that could crack moons were bouncing harmlessly off Dominion armor. And there was something else. something the Council was not discussing openly. The Dominion ships were not just stealing resources. They were learning. Each battle made them stronger, smarter, more dangerous. 3 weeks after this meeting, the unthinkable happened. Nexus Station, the great trading hub that connected dozens of systems, sent out a desperate distress call. The message was brief and terrifying. Dominion fleet incoming, massive force we cannot hold. Tell the Council we tried to. Then silence. Nexus Station had been home to 12 million beings from over 40 different species. It was the economic heart of 3 sectors, protected by the largest defense fleet in Council space. If it could fall, nowhere was safe. The emergency session that followed was chaos. Council members spoke over each other in dozens of languages and communication methods. The Shimmerer's harmonic chimes clashed with the Nebulan's electrical pulses. The Verdani's leaves rustled like a forest in a storm. Order! Speaker Veltar commanded, his voice cutting through the noise. We must remain calm. We must think clearly. But clear thinking was hard when the impossible had just happened. Nexus Station had been defended by 200 Council warships, including 3 of the massive Harmony-class dreadnoughts. The precursor, defensive grid around the system should have made it untouchable. The Kithara Collective shared their analysis with the room. Their calculations were devastating. Based on sensor data from the attack, the Dominion fleet numbered approximately 400 vessels. Response time from detection to station destruction, 14 minutes. No survivors detected. 14 minutes. 2 centuries of careful construction, generations of peaceful trade and cooperation, millions of lives, all snuffed out in less time than it took to eat lunch. How? Whispered the Verdani delegate, their voice like wind through leaves. How did they break through the precursor grid? The answer came from an unexpected source. Deep space monitoring stations on the edge of Council space had detected something new. Energy signatures unlike anything in their databases. The long-range sensors painted a picture that made no sense. The readings show a single vessel, reported. The sensor technician, a young Zephyrian whose hands shook as he spoke. But the power output, it's impossible. It reads like an entire fleet, but the mass signature says it's just one ship. The sensor data spread across the chamber's main display. The mysterious vessel was moving slowly but steadily toward Council space. Its trajectory would bring it to Kepler Prime in approximately 6 standard days. Origin, demanded Speaker Veltar. The technician's voice dropped to barely a whisper. The Sol system, Speaker. It's coming from Sol. The chamber fell silent. Sol, the human home system. The prison they had created with precursor technology. The cage that was supposed to hold humanity forever. But the barriers around Sul were still active. The monitoring stations confirmed it. The energy walls that contained humanity were intact and functioning. So how had a human ship escaped? Impossible, stated the Kithara Collective. The probability of penetrating the Sol containment is 0. The precursor barriers cannot be breached by any known technology. Yet the sensors did not lie. Something was coming from human space, and it was big enough to register as an entire battle fleet, while somehow remaining a single vessel. Over the next 6 days, the mystery ship continued its approach. Council defense fleets scrambled to intercept, but the vessel ignored all communication attempts. It simply maintained course and speed, heading directly for the heart of Council space. When it finally arrived at the edge of the Kepler system, the full scope of the impossible became clear. The ship was enormous, nearly 2 kilometers long, sleek and angular in design. Its hull was covered in strange patterns that seemed to bend light around them. Most disturbing of all, it radiated power on a scale that made the Council's largest dreadnoughts look like toys. The vessel transmitted a simple message on all frequencies. This is the UES Retribution, requesting permission to dock at Harmony's. Rest. Speaker Veltar stared at the communication display in disbelief. A human ship somehow escaped from their containment was asking politely to dock. After 5 years of silence, humanity had returned. And they had brought something that should not exist. Denied, Veltar responded immediately. Humans are forbidden. In council space, return to your system at once. The reply came without delay. Understood, Speaker Veltar. We are not here as council members. We are here as neighbors who received your distress signals. Distress signals? The council had sent no distress signals to humanity. They had cut off all communication when the barriers went up. How could the humans know about the Dominion attacks? We have sent no communications to your people, Veltar stated. No, came the calm response. But you have been broadcasting on subspace emergency frequencies for months. Your colonies crying for help. Your defense fleets calling for backup that never comes. Your people dying while you debate diplomatic solutions to a military problem. The words hit like physical blows. Because they were true, the Council had been arguing and debating while the Dominion carved through their territory. They had tried treaties and negotiations with an enemy that only understood force. State your intentions, Veltar demanded. To offer assistance. The Obsidian Dominion is a threat to all civilized life. We propose a temporary alliance to deal with this threat. And if we refuse? There was a long pause before the human voice responded. Then you will face them alone. As you chose 5 years ago. The chamber erupted in debate. Some council members wanted to reject the offer immediately. Humanity had been exiled for good reason. They were too violent, too dangerous, too unpredictable. Others pointed out that they were losing the war against the Dominion. They needed help from somewhere. But Speaker Veltar was focused on a different question. How had this ship broken through barriers that had contained star-level energies for 5 years? What had humanity been doing during their isolation? How did you breach the Sol containment, he asked. Another pause, then. We learned, Speaker. 5 years in a cage gives you time to study the bars. The implications were staggering. If humanity had found a way to break precursor technology, what else had they accomplished? What other impossible things had they created during their exile? As if reading his thoughts, the human voice continued. We know about the attacks on Nexus Station, New Harmony, the Verdani worlds, and 17 other systems. We know the Dominion is moving toward the galactic core. We know your defense fleets are being systematically destroyed. And we know you are running out of time. The accuracy of their information was as frightening as their impossible ship. How were they monitoring events across the galaxy from inside their prison? You were exiled for your violent nature, Speaker Veltar said. Why should we trust you now? Because, the human replied, sometimes violence is the only language that bullies understand. And right now you need someone who speaks that language fluently. The debate continued for hours, but in the end, desperation won over pride. The vote was close, but it passed. The human ship would be allowed to dock under heavy guard for preliminary discussions. As the massive vessel approached Harmony's rest, its strange hull patterns shifting and flowing like liquid metal, Speaker Veltar wondered if they were making the right choice. Humanity had been caged for being too dangerous. Now they were about to let that danger loose. But as he watched the latest reports scroll across his desk, reports of more worlds going silent, more fleets disappearing, more refugees fleeing the advancing darkness, he realized they might have no choice. The galaxy was burning, and the only ones offering water were the species they had cast out as firebugs. The irony was not lost on him. In trying to preserve their perfect peace, they had eliminated their best chance of surviving the coming war. The docking bay of Harmony's Rest had never hosted a ship like the UES Retribution. The massive vessel barely fit in the largest berth, its angular hull stretching from one end of the bay to the other. Council security forces surrounded the docking area, their weapons trained on the airlock, though everyone secretly wondered if their guns would even scratch the strange metal. Speaker Veltar stood behind armored glass in the observation deck, watching as the human ship completed its docking sequence. The hull patterns that had seemed to flow like liquid during approach were now still, but they continued to bend light in impossible ways. Sensors could not penetrate the armor. Energy readings fluctuated wildly. Everything about the vessel defied understanding. Security teams report ready, announced Commander Zethkar of the Cathara. The insectoid officer's mandibles clicked nervously as he studied the tactical displays. though I must note that our weapons show minimal effectiveness against the hull. Composition. Minimal effectiveness, Veltar asked. Our best energy weapons would likely bounce off like raindrops, Speaker. Whatever they have built this ship from, it is not any material in our databases. The airlock hissed open with a sound like escaping steam. Council security tensed, expecting an army of heavily armed humans to pour out. Instead, 5 figures emerged at a casual pace. They wore simple naval uniforms, dark blue with silver trim, and carried no visible weapons. The leader was a man in his 50s with graying hair and weathered features. His uniform bore the rank insignia of a ship captain, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in dangerous situations. Behind him came 4 others, a woman in science officer blue, 2 men in engineering red, and another woman whose medical insignia marked her as a doctor. 5 people, muttered Commander Zethkar. They brought 5 people to crew a ship that size? Speaker Veltar was wondering the same thing. The retribution was nearly 2 kilometers long. A council ship that size would require a crew of thousands. Yet sensors detected fewer than 50 life signs aboard the entire vessel. The human captain approached the security checkpoint with his hands visible and empty. When the scanner beams washed over him, they registered standard human biology. No cybernetic enhancements, no hidden weapons, no unusual technology. Just a middle-aged man in a naval uniform. Captain Marcus Cross of the United Earth ship Retribution, he announced to the security officer, requesting permission to address the Galactic Council. The security officer, a crystalline shimmerer whose faceted body reflected the bay lights, chimed uncertainly. The harmonics translated as confusion and concern. You are unexpected, Captain Cross. Cross smiled, and there was something both friendly and unsettling about the expression. I imagine we are. It has been a while since we last visited. The security escort led the human delegation through the corridors of Harmony's Rest. Council members and staff stopped to stare as they passed. Most had never seen humans in person. The exile had been so complete that an entire generation had grown up knowing humanity only as a cautionary tale. The humans looked ordinary. They were smaller than the towering Kythera, less graceful than the floating Zephyrians, less colorful than the plant-like Verdani. They appeared to be exactly what the Council had always believed, a primitive, unremarkable species that had somehow stumbled into space travel. But there was something in their eyes, a sharpness, an awareness, a sense of coiled energy, barely contained. They moved like predators pretending to be harmless. The council chamber had been reconfigured for the meeting. Additional security barriers had been erected, and weapon systems were on standby. Speaker Veltar took his position on the central platform, while the human delegation was escorted to the speaking area. Captain Cross looked around the chamber, with interest, taking note of each species section, the defensive arrangements, the exit routes. His eyes lingered on the precursor artifacts built into the station's structure. Ancient devices that most council members had forgotten were even there. Captain Cross, Speaker Veltar began, his voice carrying clearly through the chambers. Acoustics. You have requested this meeting. Speak your purpose. Cross stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. Speaker Veltar, honored council members, I come with an offer of alliance against the Obsidian Dominion. I also come with information you need to hear. What information could you possibly possess? Demanded the Verdani representative, their leaves rustling with irritation. You have been isolated for 5 years. Isolated, yes, blind and deaf, no. Cross gestured, and one of his officers activated a portable holographic projector. The display showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy, with red zones marking Dominion-controlled territory. The map was disturbingly accurate. It showed not just the systems that had fallen, but the current positions of Dominion fleets, their likely next targets, and the strategic resources they were after. Information that even the Council's own intelligence services did not possess. How? Whispered the Kythara collective. We watch, Cross said simply. We listen. We learn. 5 years ago, you locked us in a cage and expected us to sit quietly. Instead, we used the time to understand our situation. He touched a control and the hologram shifted to show the Sol barrier. The energy walls that had contained humanity for 5 years appeared as a complex geometric pattern of interwoven forces. The precursor technology you used to imprison us, Cross continued, is remarkable. Energy barriers that can contain stellar-level forces, matter conversion fields that can reshape reality itself, quantum manipulation on a scale we had never imagined. Speaker Veltar felt a chill run through his ethereal form. You studied the barriers. We studied everything. When you are locked in a room, you learn every detail of that room, the composition of the walls, the source of the locks, the weaknesses in the structure. Cross smiled again, and this time it was definitely unsettling. We learned that your precursor artifacts are not just defensive tools. They are components. Components of what? Demanded the Chimera representative, their crystalline form chiming with alarm. Of something much larger. Something the precursors built, but never completed. They left behind pieces scattered across the galaxy, powerful on their own, but incomplete. You used 12 of those pieces to build our cage, but we figured out what they were really meant to do. The implications hit the Council like a shockwave. If humanity had discovered the true purpose of precursor technology, if they had found a way to complete what the ancient civilization had started. The barriers around Sol, Cross continued, were not just our prison. They were our laboratory. For 5 years we experimented, tested, and built. We learned to integrate human engineering with precursor science. The result is the ship you see before you. He gestured toward the docking bay where the Retribution waited. The first vessel of its class, a synthesis of human innovation and precursor power, but not the last. The chamber erupted in alarmed chatter. The nebulons pulsed with agitation, their gaseous forms flickering between colors. The aquatic depths sang deep notes of concern. Even the normally calm Verdani rustled with fear. You built more? Speaker Veltar asked, though he dreaded the answer. We built what we needed to survive, Cross replied. And to help our neighbors when the time came. Help? The Kythera collective buzzed angrily. You were exiled because you were too violent, too dangerous. Now you return with impossible weapons and offer help? Why should we trust you? Cross was quiet for a long moment, his weathered face thoughtful. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but firm. 5 years ago you judged us for fighting, back against slavers and murderers. You called us violent because we refused to let our people be taken. You exiled us because we would not submit to evil. He looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of each representative in turn. But evil has not gone away. The Dominion is stronger now, more organized, more dangerous. They have taken 17 of your systems in 6 months. How many diplomatic protests have you filed? How many negotiation attempts have they ignored? How many of your people have died while you search for peaceful solutions to mass murder? The chamber fell silent, because the truth was uncomfortable, but undeniable. The Council's peaceful methods had failed completely against the Dominion. You exiled us for being too aggressive, Cross continued. Maybe you were right. Maybe we are too quick to fight, too ready for war. But right now, war is what you have. Whether you wanted it or not, whether you prepared for it or not, you are in a fight for survival, and you are losing. He activated the hologram again, showing the projected expansion of Dominion territory. The red zones spread like a cancer across the galactic map, consuming system after system. At their current rate of expansion, they will reach the galactic core in 18 months. They will control the major trade routes, the resource centers, the population hubs. After that, mopping up the outer systems will be trivial. The projections were devastating, but accurate. The Council's own analysts had reached similar conclusions but had been reluctant to share them widely. So here is our offer, Cross said. An alliance. Not as your subjects or your servants, but as equals. We have the weapons and tactics to fight the Dominion. You have the infrastructure and resources to support a galactic war. Together we might have a chance. And if we refuse? Asked Speaker Veltar. Cross shrugged. Then you face them alone. We will return to our system and prepare our own defenses. When the Dominion finally comes for us, we will be ready. But the galaxy will be theirs. The brutal honesty was refreshing after years of diplomatic double talk. Here was someone offering a clear choice with clear consequences. The Council will need time to deliberate, Veltar announced. Of course, but while you deliberate, keep in mind that the
Dominion does not pause for your debates.
Every day you delay is another day they grow stronger. As if summoned by his words, alarms suddenly began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed as the communication system crackled to life. Alert! Long-range sensors detect massive fleet approaching the Kepler system. Estimated arrival 6 hours. Configuration matches Obsidian Dominion signatures. The chamber erupted in panic. The Dominion had found them. After 5 years of safety behind their barriers and defenses, the enemy had come to the heart of Council, space. Captain Cross remained calm amid the chaos. He looked at Speaker Veltar with an expression that might have been sympathy. It seems your time for deliberation has run out, Speaker. The Dominion has made the choice for you. Outside the station, space began to shimmer as massive shapes dropped out of hyperspace. Black ships with angular hulls and weapon ports that glowed like dying stars. Hundreds of them, more than had ever been seen in one place. The test of humanity's offer was about to begin. The Council chamber had transformed from a place of debate into a war room in minutes. Tactical displays showed the approaching Dominion fleet in terrifying detail. 300 black ships, including the massive dreadnoughts that had shattered the defenses at Nexus Station. The largest invasion force ever assembled was bearing down on the heart of Council space. Captain Cross stood calmly at the central display while chaos erupted around him. Council members shouted in dozens of languages, their panic filling the chamber with noise. Only the humans seemed unaffected by the approaching doom. Defensive positions, commanded Speaker Veltar, his ethereal form flickering with stress. All Council fleets converge on Kepler Prime. Activate the planetary shields. Prepare the station for siege. The tactical officer, a nervous young shimmerer, chimed with distress as he updated the displays. Council Defense Fleet status. 47 ships operational in system. Reinforcements from nearby sectors estimated arrival 12 hours. The Dominion would be here in 6. That is not enough, buzzed the Cathara Collective, their thousands of voices speaking in perfect unison. Mathematical analysis shows Council forces at 15% effectiveness against observed Dominion capabilities. 15%. Speaker Veltar felt despair creeping through his consciousness. 5 years of peace and prosperity, and it would all end in a single battle. Perhaps, said Captain Cross quietly, this would be a good time to discuss our offer more seriously. All eyes turned to the human. His calm confidence was both reassuring and infuriating. How could he be so relaxed when death approached from the stars? Your offer is to fight beside us, said the Verdani representative, their leaves rustling with fear. But you have only one ship. How can one vessel change the outcome of this battle? Cross smiled, and something predatory flickered in his eyes. Who said we only brought one ship? Before anyone could ask what he meant, he activated his personal communicator. Retribution to Task Force Omega. Begin decloak sequence. The tactical displays erupted with new contacts. 6 more massive vessels appeared on sensors around the system, shimmering into visibility like ghosts becoming solid. Each one was similar, in size to the Retribution, their hulls covered in the same light-bending patterns. The chamber fell silent except for the soft harmonics of shocked shimmers and the rustling of terrified Verdani leaves. 7 ships, whispered Speaker Veltar. You brought 7 ships like the Retribution? The first 7 of their class, Cross confirmed, with more under construction back home. Did you think we spent 5 years in prison doing nothing? Implications were staggering. If each ship was as powerful as the readings suggested, the humans had just changed the entire balance of power in the galaxy. How? Demanded the Cathara Collective. How did you build such vessels? How did you hide them from our sensors? Cross gestured to his science officer, a woman with short gray hair and intelligent eyes. She stepped forward and activated a more detailed holographic display. Dr. Sarah Kim, head of the Precursor Integration Project. She introduced herself. 5 years ago, your barriers trapped us in the Sol system. But those barriers were not just walls. They were active precursor technology, constantly operating at full power right in front of us. The hologram showed the Sol system during the imprisonment, with energy readings from the barrier devices. We had unlimited access to study advanced technology that most species only see as inactive artifacts in museums. We could run experiments, test theories, and learn how it really worked. Dr. Kim touched a control, and the display shifted to show human ships during construction. We discovered that precursor technology is not just about energy manipulation. It is about matter conversion at the quantum level. They did not build things the way we do. They convinced reality to reorganize itself into the shapes they wanted, the O. Science was barely comprehensible to most council members, but the results were obvious. The human ships were not just advanced engineering. They were something entirely new. But how did you power such constructions? Asked the Nebulan representative, their gaseous form pulsing with curiosity. The energy requirements would be enormous. We had the barriers, Cross said simply. 12 precursor devices operating at stellar level output, 24 hours. A day for 5 years. We learned to tap into that power grid and redirect it for our own purposes. The audacity was breathtaking. Humanity had used their prison's own power source to build the tools of their escape. The barriers around Sol, Dr. Kim continued, were designed to contain us. But precursor technology works on quantum entanglement principles. Every device is connected to every other device across the galaxy. When we learned to interface with our local barriers, we gained access to the entire network. That is impossible, stated the Cathera Collective. Precursor security protocols would prevent such access. Security protocols designed by a species that went extinct 50,000 years ago, Cross replied. They were brilliant, but they could not anticipate every possibility. Especially the possibility of a species that thinks differently than they did. He paused, looking around the chamber. The precursors were builders of perfect order. Every system in harmony, every component precisely calibrated. They could not imagine a species chaotic enough to find the gaps in perfection. The insult was delivered so casually that it took a moment to register. Cross was saying that humanity's supposed flaws, their unpredictability and aggression, had allowed them to succeed where more civilized species had failed. This is all very impressive, interrupted Speaker Veltar. But we have more immediate concerns. The Dominion fleet will arrive in 4 hours. Can your ships actually defeat them? Cross exchanged glances with his officers. Dr. Kim nodded slightly. Show them, Cross said. Dr. Kim activated a new holographic sequence. 3 months ago we encountered a Dominion scouting force near the edge of our system. 12 ships, including 2 heavy cruisers. They were testing the barriers, looking for weaknesses. The display showed the battle in real time. A small fleet of Black Dominion ships approached the Sol barriers, their weapons firing at the energy walls. The barriers held, but the ships continued their bombardment. Then something emerged from inside the barrier, a single human vessel, smaller than the Retribution but clearly of similar design. It phased through the energy wall like it was not there and engaged the Dominion fleet. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration of overwhelming superiority. The human ship moved like a ghost, its weapons passing through Dominion, shields as if they did not exist. Enemy vessels exploded one after another, their hulls simply disintegrating under weapons fire that ignored conventional defenses. In less than 3 minutes, 11 of the 12 Dominion ships were destroyed. The last one fled at maximum speed, broadcasting what could only be a warning to its superiors. Impressive, said the Verdani representative. But that was only a small force. The fleet approaching us has 300 ships, including their planet-killer dreadnoughts. True, Cross admitted. This will be a much larger engagement. But we have learned a great deal about Dominion technology from studying the wreckage. Their ships are powerful but predictable. Their weapons are devastating but conventional. Their shields are strong but use principles we understand. He gestured to the tactical display showing the approaching fleet. The Dominion has one great advantage. They are willing to use overwhelming force without restraint. But they have one great weakness. They assume everyone else thinks like they do. Meaning? Asked Speaker Veltar. They expect their enemies to fight like they fight. Stand in formation, exchange firepower, rely on heavy armor and strong shields. They have never faced an enemy that could simply ignore their defenses and strike at will. The confidence in Cross's voice was infectious, but Speaker Veltar still felt doubt. Even if your ships are as effective as you claim, 7 vessels against 300 seems inadequate. You are thinking in terms of conventional warfare, Dr. Kim interjected. One ship against many, expecting to trade losses until one side is eliminated. But that is not how our ships fight. She activated another display showing tactical projections. Our vessels do not engage in ship-to-ship combat the way you understand it. They phase through enemy formations, striking critical systems and moving on. One ship can disable dozens of enemies in minutes. Phase through? The Kithra collective buzzed with scientific interest. You have developed practical quantum tunneling for macroscopic objects? Among other things, Cross said vaguely. 5 years of studying active precursor technology has given us many new capabilities. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative. But none of that matters if you do not accept our alliance. We can protect ourselves, but we cannot protect the entire galaxy alone. This battle will decide not just the fate of Kepler Prime, but the future of galactic civilization. The weight of decision pressed down on the Council. Accept help from the species they had exiled, or face annihilation alone. What are your terms? Speaker Veltar asked finally. Full reinstatement in the galactic community, Cross replied immediately. Equal representation in the Council, an end to the trade restrictions and movement barriers, and joint command of the defense against the Dominion. Joint command? The Verdani representative's leaves rustled with alarm. You want to control our military forces? I want to coordinate our efforts, Cross corrected. Your ships are designed for peacekeeping and exploration. Ours are designed for war. Fighting the Dominion requires military thinking, not diplomatic thinking. It was a hard truth, but Speaker Veltar could not deny its accuracy. The Council's peaceful methods had been useless against the Dominion threat. The vote, he announced, all in favor of accepting the Human Alliance proposal. One by one, the votes were cast. The Zephyrians voted yes, their fear overcoming their pride. The Verdani voted yes, remembering their lost worlds. The Shimmerers chimed agreement. The Nebulans pulsed approval. When the count was finished, the result was 8 votes in favor, 4 against. Not unanimous, but enough. The alliance is approved, Speaker Veltar declared. Captain Cross, you have your agreement. Cross nodded solemnly. Then let us prepare for battle. The Dominion fleet will arrive in 2 hours, and we have work to do. As alarms continued to blare throughout the station, the Council watched the outer tactical displays showing their new allies taking position. 7 impossible ships powered by alien technology and human ingenuity, preparing to face the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. The test of humanity's true capabilities was about to begin. The Obsidian Dominion fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a plague of black locusts. 300 vessels arranged in perfect attack formation, their angular hulls absorbing light and radiating menace. At the center of the fleet, 3 massive, dreadnoughts-powered weapons capable of cracking planets. On Harmony's Rest, the Council Defense Fleet had taken position around the station. 47 ships of various designs built for exploration and peacekeeping now faced the most destructive force in the galaxy. Their captains knew they were about to die, but they held formation anyway. Captain Cross stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the enemy fleet approach. His ship and 6 others hung in space near the Council formation, their strange hulls shimmering with barely contained energy. To the Dominion sensors, they probably looked like minor additions to the defense fleet. That was exactly what Crossy Barrett wanted them to think. Enemy fleet at 2 million kilometers and closing, reported his tactical officer. They are maintaining formation and charging weapons. Any communication attempts? Cross asked. None, sir. They are not interested in surrender terms. Cross nodded. The Dominion never offered terms. They took what they wanted and destroyed the rest. It was a simple philosophy that had served them well against peaceful species who expected negotiation, but humanity had never been particularly peaceful. Signal the fleet, Cross ordered. Execute Battle Plan Omega on my mark. The Dominion fleet continued its approach, weapons systems glowing with malevolent energy. At 1,000,000 kilometers they opened fire. The space around Kepler Prime erupted in light and death. Thousands of energy beams and plasma torpedoes lanced out from the Dominion fleet, targeting the Council ships and Harmony's Rest. The ancient station's shields flared and held, but several Council vessels were not so fortunate. The light cruiser, New Harmony, took a direct hit from a dreadnought's main gun and simply vanished in a ball of superheated plasma. The exploration vessel, Deep Current, tried to evade but was caught by a spread of torpedoes that tore through its hull like paper. Within minutes, a quarter of the Council fleet was destroyed or disabled. The survivors returned fire with their own weapons, but their peacekeeping lasers barely scratched the Dominion's heavy armor. "Sir," called the tactical officer, "Council flagship is requesting immediate assistance. They cannot hold this formation much longer." Cross watched the slaughter on his screens and felt the familiar cold anger that had sustained humanity through 5 years of exile. The same species that had cast out humanity for being too violent were now dying because they had forgotten how to fight. "Mark," he said quietly. The 7 human ships moved as one, but they did not charge into battle like the Council vessels. Instead, they simply vanished. The Dominion fleet continued its bombardment, unaware that anything had changed. Their sensors showed the same enemy formation, the same power signatures, the same defensive positions. What they did not show was the 7 vessels that had shifted into a quantum state that made them effectively invisible to conventional detection. The Retribution phased through the center of the Dominion formation like a ghost. Its weapons charged, drawing power from the same precursor technology that kept it hidden from enemy sensors. When it fired, the results were devastating. The first Dominion cruiser simply fell apart. Its hull integrity failed catastrophically, as weapons that ignored conventional physics tore through its structure. The second ship tried to raise shields, but the human weapons passed through energy barriers as if they were not there. By the time the Dominion fleet realized they were under attack, 6 more ships were dying. Energy signatures that should not exist were tearing through their formation, destroying vessels faster than their sensors could track. "What is happening?" demanded Overlord Vextar from the bridge of the lead dreadnought. "The massive aliens." Forearms gestured frantically at displays that showed ship after ship going dark. "Unknown, Overlord," replied his sensor operator, a smaller member of the same species. "Energy signatures are inconsistent with database records. Weapons appear to be phasing through our defenses." Vextar's black eyes narrowed with rage. The Dominion had conquered half the galaxy using superior firepower and ruthless tactics. They did not lose battles to inferior species with obsolete technology. "All ships concentrated fire on the largest energy signature," he commanded. "Destroy whatever is causing this." 200 Dominion vessels turned their weapons toward the Retribution, which had just become visible again after destroying another cruiser. The combined firepower of an entire fleet focused on one target. The space around the human ship erupted in a nova of destructive energy. Plasma beams, quantum torpedoes, and exotic matter disruptors converged on the Retribution with enough force to vaporize a small moon. When the light faded, the ship was still there. Its hull showed no damage, no scorch marks, no sign that it had just absorbed enough firepower to level a city. The strange patterns on its armor continued to shift and flow as if nothing had happened. "Impossible," whispered the Dominion sensor. Operator.Cross activated the communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Obsidian Dominion Fleet, this is Captain Marcus Cross of the United Earthship Retribution. You are trespassing in sovereign space and have attacked peaceful installations. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Overlord Vextar's laughter was like grinding metal. "Humans, the Council's discarded pets. We studied your pathetic colonies before we destroyed them. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are weak. Your species is soft. You are correct on all counts, Cross replied calmly. We were all of those things 5 years ago. Would you like to see what we have become? The human fleet dropped out of their quantum phase simultaneously. 7 massive vessels appeared throughout the Dominion formation, their weapons already firing. What followed was not a battle, but a systematic dismantling of enemy forces. The human ships moved like living things, phasing in and out of normal space at will. Their weapons ignored shields, armor, and defensive fields. When they fired, Dominion vessels simply ceased to exist as coherent structures. But more disturbing than their technology was their tactics. The humans did not simply destroy ships randomly. They targeted command vessels first, then heavy weapons platforms, then support craft. They were methodically decapitating the Dominion fleet's ability to coordinate and fight back. Retreat, Overlord Vexitar commanded as his formation collapsed around him. All ships emergency hyperspace jump. But the human vessels had anticipated this. As Dominion ships attempted to flee, they found their hyperspace drives failing. Some invisible force was preventing them from escaping the battle zone. Hyperspace interdiction field, Dr. Kim explained to Captain Cross over the communication channel. Modified from precursor spatial manipulation technology. Nothing leaves this system without our permission. Cross nodded with satisfaction. The Dominion had come here expecting to destroy another helpless world. Instead, they had walked into a trap. Within an hour, the battle was over. Of the 300 ships that had arrived, fewer than 50 remained functional. The massive dreadnoughts lay broken and burning, their planet-killing weapons silenced forever. The survivors huddled together in a defensive formation that would not save them if the humans chose to continue the attack. But the human ships had stopped firing. They held position around the defeated fleet, weapons powered but not targeting. Cross opened communication channels again. Overlord Vextar, your fleet is defeated. Your ships are disabled. Your weapons are destroyed. I am offering you one chance to surrender and withdraw from this system. From the bridge of his crippled dreadnought, Vextar stared at the impossible. Human vessels in rage and disbelief. The Dominion had never surrendered. They conquered or they died. But they had also never faced an enemy like this. What are your terms? He asked through gritted teeth. Simple. You will leave Council space immediately. You will not return. Any Dominion vessel found in this region of the galaxy will be destroyed without warning. You will also release all slaves and prisoners taken during your expansion. And if we refuse? Cross was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Then you will join your fallen comrades. Choose quickly, Overlord. My patience has limits. Vextar looked around his devastated bridge, at the broken displays and injured crew. He thought of the dreadnoughts that had been torn apart like toys, of the impossible weapons that ignored every defense, of the humans who had appeared from nowhere to shatter his invincible fleet. The Dominion accepts your terms, he said finally. Excellent. You have 1 hour to collect your survivors and depart. After that, any Dominion vessel remaining in this system will be considered hostile. As the broken remains of the Dominion fleet limped away into hyperspace, the Council vessels moved in to secure the battlefield. The space around Kepler Prime was littered with wreckage and debris, but Harmony's Rest remained intact. The heart of galactic civilization had been saved. On the station, Speaker Veltar floated in his chamber, staring at the tactical displays that showed the impossible battle's outcome. 7 human ships had defeated 300 Dominion vessels with minimal casualties. The most feared fleet in the galaxy had been broken like glass against human determination and alien technology. Captain Cross materialized on the communication screen, his weathered face calm and professional. Speaker Veltar, the immediate threat has been neutralized. The Dominion fleet has been driven off and will not return. Captain, Veltar said slowly, what we have witnessed today, it changes everything. Your ships, your weapons, your capabilities. The balance of power in the galaxy has shifted completely. Cross nodded. Yes, it has. The question now is what we do with that power. You could rule the galaxy, Veltar observed. Your technology is so far beyond ours that resistance would be meaningless. You could impose human order on all species. We could, Cross agreed. But we won't. Conquest was never our goal, Speaker. Protection was. Today we protected our neighbors from a threat they could not handle alone. Tomorrow we will continue to protect them. And in return? Respect, equality, a voice in galactic affairs. We don't want to rule the galaxy, but we will not be excluded from it again. Veltar considered this. 5 years ago, the Council had exiled humanity for being too dangerous for peace. Today, humanity had proved they were exactly dangerous enough for war. The alliance will be formalized, he promised. Humanity will have full representation in the Council. The trade restrictions and movement barriers will be lifted. You have earned your place among us. Thank you, Cross said simply. But remember, Speaker, this was just the beginning. The Dominion is wounded but not destroyed. They will return with new ships, new weapons, new strategies, and there may be other threats we have not yet discovered. But we will face them together, Veltar replied. Yes, Cross agreed. Together. 6 months later, Harmony's Rest had been rebuilt and expanded. The council chamber now included a section for human representatives, their simple chairs contrasting with the elaborate arrangements of other species. Trade flowed freely between human and alien worlds. Scientific cooperation had produced remarkable advances, and in the shipyards around Earth, new vessels took shape. Not just warships like the Retribution, but exploration craft, medical ships, and construction platforms. Humanity was building a fleet worthy of their new position in galactic society. The Obsidian Dominion had retreated to the galactic rim, licking their wounds and planning revenge. But they no longer seemed quite so invincible. Word had spread throughout the galaxy of the species that had broken their greatest fleet in a single battle. Speaker Veltar often found himself thinking about the events that had led to this moment. The Council's fear of human aggression had nearly destroyed them all. It had taken a crisis to reveal the truth. Sometimes the very qualities that make someone dangerous to your enemies are exactly what you need to survive. Humanity had been exiled for being too warlike, too violent, too willing to fight. They had returned as the galaxy's protectors, their dangerous nature finally directed where it belonged. The galaxy was a more complicated place now, but it was also a safer one. And somewhere in the depths of space, more human ships were coming, online, ready to defend the peace they had fought so hard to secure. The species that had been too dangerous for peace had become exactly dangerous enough for war, and the galaxy was better for it.
The circular chamber of the Galactic Confederation's High Council gleamed with the soft blue light of holographic displays. 20 council members from different species sat around the massive table, their attention fixed on Commander Vex, who stood at the center. His tall, slender frame cast a long shadow across the polished floor as he gestured to the planet displayed in the air before them. Earth, third planet from a standard G-type star. One natural satellite. Dominant species. Humans. Vex's four-fingered hand moved through the hologram, causing it to zoom in on the blue-green world. They have achieved nuclear capability, basic space travel within their solar system, and show rapid advancement in computational technology. High Council member Trell tapped a long finger against the table. Unlike Vex's gray skin, Trell's was a deep purple that darkened when annoyed, as it was doing now. Commander, we have 11 potential threat assessments to complete today. The humans still use chemical rockets. They haven't even colonized their own moon permanently. Trell's secondary eyes blinked impatiently. I propose we classify them as minimal threat potential and move on. Commander Vex stiffened. With respect, Council member, there are unusual patterns in their development. Their theoretical physics advances faster than their applied technology. They imagine things before they can build them. As do many species, Trell replied. Yet most never bridge that gap. Vex moved his hand again, bringing up a new display, radio signals emanating from Earth. Their communications show unusual characteristics. They broadcast stories about space travel far beyond their capabilities. They imagine technologies they can't possibly create. It's as if. As if what, Commander? Asked Council Member Drawl, an elder whose skin had faded to pale blue with age. As if they're rehearsing for a future they'd fully expect to have. Vex finished. I recommend continued close monitoring despite their current technological limitations. Trell rose from his seat, standing at nearly twice Vex's height. He dominated the chamber. The Confederation faces real threats. The Voral expansion at the Outer Rim. The resource crisis in the Bendari sector. We cannot waste precious monitoring resources on a species that might become interesting in a few hundred cycles. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the Council. Resource allocation had become a constant battle in recent cycles, with budget cuts affecting every division of the Confederation's vast bureaucracy. The surveillance stations in the Sol system cost us the equivalent of maintaining a defensive fleet in the Cygnus Arm, added Council Member Merrick, their bony crest flexing with concern. Our Strategic Assessment Division recommends reallocating those resources. Vex tried one more time. There's something about their transmissions. Enough, Commander. Trell's voice filled the chamber. We appreciate your diligence, but the decision is made. Earth is classified as minimal threat potential. The surveillance network in that sector will be decommissioned according to schedule. Vex's shoulders dropped slightly, but he maintained his professional composure. As the Council directs. 3 cycles later, Vex stood in the main control room of Monitoring Station Epsilon 12. The largest of the Confederation's surveillance posts, orbiting in the shadow of the gas giant the humans called Jupiter. Technicians moved around him, packing equipment and preparing for the station's shutdown. Send me the final assessment report before you wipe the systems, Vex instructed Chief Analyst Mori, who nodded her bulbous head. Already prepared, Commander. Though I must note my team shares your concerns. Her wide-set eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of distress in her species. We've detected unusual spikes in their quantum physics research transmissions, and their entertainment broadcasts increasingly depict advanced space travel scenarios with surprising technical accuracy. Vex reviewed the report on his console, scrolling through the data. Any direct evidence of technological breakthrough? Nothing conclusive. Their space agencies still struggle with the same chemical propulsion systems. Their attempts at nuclear propulsion remain theoretical. No evidence of artificial gravity or energy shields. Mori hesitated before adding, but their theoretical models are becoming more sophisticated. There's a mathematical elegance to their recent work that what? Vex prompted when she fell silent. That some of our scientists find impressive, she admitted, particularly their approaches to problems from unusual angles. They think differently. Vex saved the report to his personal device. Make a note of that in the final assessment. Already done, Commander, but no one will read it. Mori gestured to the emptying control room. This whole network will go dark in 6 hours. The data archive will be compressed and stored in the central library on Xilaris. No one accesses those archives unless there's a reason. And without monitoring, we'll have no reason, Vex mused. A perfect circle of ignorance. The final shutdown sequence began around them, systems powering down one by one. Holographic displays flickered and vanished. The hum of processors faded to silence. It feels wrong, Mori said quietly. 17 cycles of monitoring, ended because of budget cuts. Vex moved to the last active viewing port, gazing at the distant speck that was Earth. Add one final note to the report, Chief Analyst. Sir, note that Commander Vex officially protests this decision and recommends review in no more than 5 cycles. Mori hesitated. That will not be well received by the Council. Nevertheless, make the note. She nodded and added the entry. The report was filed, compressed, and transmitted to the Central Archive on Xilaris, where it would join billions of other reports in the vast data vaults of the Confederation, unread and forgotten. As the last Confederation personnel boarded their transport vessel, automated systems completed the final shutdown sequence. The massive sensor arrays that had monitored Earth's communications for nearly 2 decades powered down. The quantum entanglement communicators that had instantly relayed data across light years fell silent. The stealth field generators that had kept the station hidden from Earth's primitive detection systems ceased functioning. In the darkness of space, the monitoring station became just another piece of orbiting debris, indistinguishable from the countless asteroids and moonlets circling the gas giant. On Earth, in an underground facility beneath the New Mexico desert, a technician looked up from her console with a puzzled expression. "Sir," she called to her supervisor, "that strange signal we've been tracking near Jupiter, it's gone." Her supervisor barely glanced up from his tablet. "Probably just some unusual solar radiation pattern. Make a note in the log and move on." "Yes, sir." She hesitated before adding, "But it was the 3rd signal to disappear this month, all from different points in our outer solar system." "Coincidence," he replied, already walking away, "or equipment malfunction. Run a diagnostic on the deep space array." "Already did, sir. Everything's working perfectly." But her supervisor had already left the room. With a sigh, she made her entry in the log. Unidentified signal J27, ceased at 3:42 hours. Cause unknown. She couldn't know that she had just witnessed the Confederation abandoning its watch over Earth, nor could she know what that abandonment would mean for humanity's future among the stars. The clock was now ticking on the greatest misjudgment in Confederation history. 10 years passed since the Confederation abandoned their monitoring stations. 10 years of silence during which humanity took an unexpected leap. Admiral James Wilson stood before the massive viewport of Earth's first true starship, the Pathfinder. At 62, his hair had turned completely white, but his eyes still held the sharp intensity that had made him legendary in global military circles. The blue glow of faster-than-light energies reflected off his face as he watched the stars blur. "FTL transition complete, Admiral," reported Captain Bell from her command chair. "All systems nominal. We've successfully reached the Proxima Centauri system." Wilson nodded, maintaining his stoic expression despite the historic moment. Humanity had just completed its first jump beyond the solar system, a journey that should have taken years accomplished in mere hours. "Begin stealth protocols," Wilson ordered. "No active scanning until we've completed passive sweep of the system." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. Though this was their first actual interstellar journey, they had trained for years in simulations. Every officer knew the importance of the Admiral's standing order: remain undetected at all costs. "Sir," asked Lieutenant Parker, looking up from his sensor station, "do you really believe there are aliens watching?" Wilson turned his gaze to the young officer. "I've spent 30 years analyzing those signals, Lieutenant. The ones that suddenly disappeared from our outer solar system one by one. They weren't natural phenomena." Captain Bell nodded in agreement. "The technology we developed from studying those signal patterns is what powers this ship. Someone was watching us, and then they stopped. The question is, why? And more importantly," Wilson added, "what will they do when they realize we've noticed and used their technology against them?" 6 months later, in a hidden facility beneath the lunar surface, Dr. Maya Rivera guided her team through the final adjustments to Earth's newest breakthrough. The chamber housing the quantum entanglement communicator hummed with energy as technicians calibrated its delicate components. "Careful with the alignment," Maya instructed. "We only get one shot at establishing the link with Pathfinder." Her assistant, Dr. Tom Harris, checked the readings on his tablet. "It's still remarkable that we figured this out from those fragments of alien signals. Instantaneous communication across 20 light years." Maya smiled slightly. "Not just figured it out, improved it. Our version uses 30% less energy than what we could determine from their transmission patterns." The truth was something few people outside this facility knew. Humanity's great technological leap forward hadn't come from brilliant innovation alone, but from careful study of the mysterious signals that had surrounded Earth for years. When those signals vanished, Earth's combined scientific community had been given a singular purpose: determine what had been watching them and prepare for either contact or conflict. A soft chime indicated the system was ready. Maya took a deep breath and activated the quantum link. Pathfinder, this is Luna Base. Do you receive? After a moment of silence that felt eternal, Admiral Wilson's voice came through with perfect clarity despite being 20 light-years away. Luna Base, this is Pathfinder. We receive you 5 by 5. Quantum entanglement link established and stable. A cheer erupted through the lunar facility. Maya exchanged a smile with Tom before returning to professional mode. Admiral, we're ready to receive your report. Wilson's voice became grave. Pathfinder has established our 8th outpost at the edge of what we believe is alien-controlled space. We've detected regular traffic patterns consistent with an advanced civilization. Ships moving faster than light, using a method different from our own. Maya's fingers flew across her console, documenting every word. Any signs they've detected our presence? Negative. Our stealth technology is working perfectly. They seem to have no concept of the approach we're using to mask our energy signatures. There was a pause before Wilson continued. Dr. Rivera, we've recovered something from an abandoned outpost. Some kind of data storage device. We're bringing it back for analysis. How soon? 2 weeks, Earth time. But there's something else you should know. Wilson's voice lowered. Based on our observations, these aliens are organized, highly structured, and they're everywhere. We're looking at what appears to be a vast interstellar empire or confederation. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. And they have no idea we're watching them now. Exactly. The hunters have become the hunted. In the Confederation's Central Planning Division on planet Silaris, Junior Analyst Kroll was having the worst day of his career. The youngster's scales had turned a sickly green as he stood before Director Nev's desk. You filed the resource extension request for the wrong sector, Junior Analyst. Nev said, his voice dangerously calm. Sector 9 Theta is the Benderi mining region, not the Terran observation post. I apologize, Director, Kroll stammered. But the Terran observation program was terminated years ago, during the budget reallocation under Council Member Trell. Nev's secondary eyelids closed slowly, a sign of extreme irritation. Yes, but the automated alert system was supposed to remain active. Basic protocols for all potentially developing worlds. There was no budget allocated for maintaining those systems. Director. Kroll pulled up the relevant data on his tablet. After full withdrawal, all systems in the Sol system were powered down. No alerts have been generated because there has been no monitoring. For how long? Nev demanded. Kroll checked the records. 10 standard cycles, Director. Nev's scales darkened with concern. 10 cycles was a significant gap in monitoring, even for a primitive species like humans, while major technological breakthroughs typically took centuries for young civilizations. Exceptions had occurred. File a request for a standard probe to be dispatched to the Sol system, Nev ordered. Low priority, but make sure it happens within the next cycle. Yes, Director. Kroll hesitated. Should I note any specific concerns? Nev considered this question. The humans had been nowhere close to interstellar capability when monitoring ceased. Even with a decade of development, they would still be confined to their solar system, likely struggling with the same primitive chemical rockets. No specific concerns, Nev decided. Just standard procedure for a developing world. We'll update their file once the probe returns data. Little did Nev know that not only would the probe never reach its destination, but when it entered the outer boundary of the Sol system, it would encounter something impossible. A cloaking technology that rendered human outposts completely invisible to Confederation sensors. Admiral Wilson stood in the newly constructed chamber of the United Earth Council. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat in tiered seating, their faces solemn as they viewed the holographic display showing humanity's secret expansion. In the 10 years since alien monitoring ceased, Wilson explained, we have established 23 outposts across 11 star systems. Our fleet now consists of 47 FTL-capable vessels, all using stealth technology derived from studying alien communication patterns. President Garcia of the United Earth government leaned forward. And they still don't know we're out there. No, Madam President. Our approach to physics, what Dr. Rivera calls lateral thinking, has given us an advantage. We developed technologies along paths they seem to have never explored. Dr. Rivera stood beside the Admiral. Their technology follows predictable linear improvements. Ours took a completely different direction. They're looking for energy signatures that our ships simply don't produce. Wilson nodded and continued, we now stand at a crossroads. Continue our silent expansion, or reveal ourselves and establish diplomatic contact. The chamber fell silent as the representatives contemplated the options. Humanity had gone from a planet-bound species to an interstellar presence in just a decade, all while hidden from the vast alien civilization that had once watched them. The moment of decision approached, and somewhere across the stars, the Confederation remained blissfully unaware that their greatest misjudgment was about to be revealed. The Confederation patrol ship Vigilant cruised through the outer reaches of the Arcturus system, its long, sleek hull gleaming under the distant starlight. Captain Mord stood on the bridge, his 4 arms crossed behind his back, as he watched his crew perform routine scans. Another empty patrol, he muttered to his second-in-command, Officer Len. 3 cycles of border duty, and not a single noteworthy incident. Quiet is good, Captain, Len replied, her voice modulator adjusting to a soothing frequency. The Confederation thrives on predictability. The sensor officer suddenly straightened in her seat. Captain, unusual energy reading at coordinates 227 Mark 43. Mord's boredom vanished instantly. Classification. Unknown, sir. It appeared suddenly, as if it just arrived in the system. Mord moved to the sensor station and studied the readings himself. Launch probe drones, full spectrum analysis. The drones shy out from the Vigilant's launch tubes, streaking toward the mysterious energy signature. On the main view screen, the crew watched as the drones approached empty space, and then suddenly revealed the outline of a ship as their scanning beams struck an invisible hull. Stealth technology. Len whispered, mandibles clicking in surprise. But our sensors should detect any known cloaking field. The sensor officer worked frantically at her station. The ship appears damaged, Captain. There's a radiation leak in their propulsion system. That's what our sensors detected. Open communication channels, all frequencies, Mord ordered. And bring weapons online. Quietly. After several tense moments, the view screen flickered and showed the interior of the unknown vessel. A bipedal being sat in what appeared to be a command chair. The alien had pale skin, no scales, and only 2 arms. It wore a dark uniform with silver insignia. This is Captain Jack Reed of the Earth vessel Horizon, the alien said in perfect galactic standard. We've suffered damage to our drive system and request assistance. Mord felt his scales tighten against his body, a reflexive response to shock. Earth, the 3rd planet of the Sol system. The human captain nodded. The same. We're on a peaceful mission of exploration. Mord signaled for the communication to be muted temporarily. Len, check the Confederation database. What's the current status of Earth's technological development? Len accessed the central database through their quantum link. Last update shows them as a pre-FTL civilization. Minimal threat potential. No space presence beyond their immediate solar system. She looked up in confusion. This data is from 10 cycles ago. Mord's scales now flushed a deep blue of concern. 10 cycles with no updates. And now they have ships with stealth technology even our sensors can't detect. He gestured for communications to be restored. Captain Reed, we're dispatching a rescue team to assist with repairs. How long have your people been traveling among the stars? The human hesitated briefly. We achieved faster-than-light capability approximately 8 standard years ago. We've established several outposts for scientific research. Several. Mord asked carefully. 42 at last count, Reed replied with what Mord would later learn was a human smile. Across 17 star systems, Mord struggled to maintain his composure. A species that had been using chemical rockets 10 cycles ago now had a multi-system presence. It was unprecedented. "We'll begin rescue operations immediately," Mord said, ending the communication. Len moved closer to her captain. "Sir, Confederation protocols require immediate notification of High Command when encountering a new spacefaring species." "This isn't a new spacefaring species, technically," Mord replied. "This is a categorized civilization that has exceeded expectations." He paused. "Send the alert. Priority 1. On Xilorus, the Confederation capital world." Director Vex stared in disbelief at the report on his screen. After 15 cycles of service in the intelligence division, he had finally achieved the directorship 2 cycles ago. Now, his worst fear from his days as a commander had materialized. "Humans," he whispered, the name tasting bitter in his mouth. "I warned them. I filed the protest." His assistant, a young officer named Turl, shifted uncomfortably. "The report from Captain Mord indicates their ship uses an FTL method unlike anything in our database. And their stealth technology, it doesn't bend light or absorb sensor waves. It somehow exists, adjacent to normal space." Vex closed his eyes briefly. "Have we located their homeworld?" "Yes, Director. It's exactly where it always was." "But," Turl hesitated. "But what?" "Our long-range scans show massive orbital construction. Space stations, shipyards, defense platforms. They've industrialized their entire system in just 10 cycles." Vex rose from his desk. "Notify the High Council. Emergency session. And find me the archives from the old Earth monitoring station." "Already retrieved, sir." Turl handed over a data crystal. "The final report contains your protest note and recommendations that were never implemented." "And who was responsible for denying those recommendations?" Vex asked, though he already knew the answer. "Council Member Trell, sir, who is now High Chancellor Trell." Vex felt a cold satisfaction despite the crisis. "Excellent. Summon my shuttle. The High Chancellor should hear this news personally." Admiral Wilson stood before the United Earth Council once again, but this time with grave news. "The horizon has been discovered by Confederation forces," he announced. Captain Reed followed protocols and presented as non-threatening. The damage to their ship was real, but contained. It served as an explanation for why they were detected. President Garcia frowned. "So our stealth technology works?" "Yes, Madam President. The horizon would have remained undetected if not for the radiation leak. But now that first contact has occurred, we must decide our next move." Dr. Rivera joined the Admiral at the podium. Based on Captain Reed's communication with the Confederation vessel, they seemed genuinely shocked by our advancement. "Their database still lists us as a pre-FTL civilization. An advantage we can use," Wilson noted. "They don't know the full extent of our capabilities or presence." The defense minister leaned forward. "What are our options, Admiral?" "We can continue the facade of being a newly emerged spacefaring species with limited presence. Or," Wilson paused, "or," prompted the President, "or we reveal our true capabilities and request formal diplomatic relations as equals. The element of surprise is still ours to use." The chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives argued for caution, suggesting humanity should hide its true strength until more was known about the Confederation. Others pushed for immediate revelation, believing a position of strength would ensure better treatment. President Garcia raised her hand for silence. "What do we know about their intentions toward us?" Dr. Rivera consulted her data. "From what we've gathered, the Confederation operates on a hierarchical system based on technological development and territorial control. New species are typically assigned a protectorate status for centuries before gaining limited representation. Which would be unacceptable, Wilson added firmly. The president nodded. Prepare a diplomatic team. We will reveal ourselves, but strategically. The Confederation should understand that humanity comes to the galactic stage as an equal, not a subject. As the council session ended, Admiral Wilson and Dr. Rivera walked together through the grand hallway of Earth's United Government building. They never expected us to advance so quickly, Rivera mused. Their mistake was assuming we would follow the same technological path as other species. Wilson smiled slightly. Their bigger mistake was leaving us those breadcrumbs to follow, their communication signals, their energy signatures. By trying to watch us, they showed us exactly what to look for. And by stopping their watch, Rivera added, they gave us the freedom to develop without interference. Wilson looked out through the massive windows at the gleaming spaceport beyond, where dozens of FTL-capable ships prepared for departure to Earth's growing network of colonies and outposts. The Confederation is about to learn a valuable lesson, he said quietly. Never underestimate a species that spends half its history telling stories about meeting aliens. In the distance, the diplomatic vessel Unity began its launch sequence, preparing to carry humanity's first official representatives to meet the Confederation's High Council and to change the galactic order forever. The grand hall of the Confederation capital gleamed with polished stone and ancient metals. High Chancellor Trell stood at the center platform, his purple skin now pale with stress as he addressed the emergency session of the High Council. Behind him, a massive display showed the human diplomatic vessel approaching Celaris. The delegation from Earth will arrive within the hour, Trell announced. This situation, while unexpected, is not unprecedented. New spacefaring species emerge regularly. We will follow standard protocols for integration into the Confederation hierarchy. Director Vex stood at the side of the chamber, watching Trell's performance with narrowed eyes. The High Chancellor was attempting to normalize an unprecedented situation. Vex had spent the last 3 days reviewing every scrap of data on human advancement, and nothing about it followed expected patterns. Council Member Drawl, one of the few who had been present during the original Earth assessment 15 cycles ago, raised a gnarled hand. High Chancellor, perhaps Director Vex should brief us on Intelligence Division's current assessment of Earth's capabilities. Trell's secondary eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of irritation. Is that necessary? We'll have direct information soon enough. I believe it is, Drawl insisted, especially given Director Vex's early warnings about this species. All eyes turned to Vex, who stepped forward with calm precision. He had waited 15 cycles for this moment. Esteemed Council, he began, human advancement does not match any developmental model in our historical database. In the 10 cycles since we terminated observation, they have not only achieved faster than light travel, but have developed it along theoretical frameworks our scientists considered impossible. He gestured, bringing up a new display showing sensor readings from the human ship. Their FTL method doesn't create the subspace distortions our technology uses. It somehow folds space itself, a theory our physicists abandoned thousands of cycles ago as unworkable. Murmurs spread through the council as Vex continued. More concerning is their stealth technology. It doesn't bend light or absorb sensor waves. According to our preliminary analysis, it shifts their vessels partially out of phase with normal spacetime. Impossible, stated Council Member Laurel, the Confederation's leading scientific authority. Phase shifting would tear apart any physical structure. And yet, Vex replied calmly, the evidence is before you. Furthermore, intercepted communications suggest they have established not just scientific outposts but fully functioning colonies. 42 confirmed settlements across 17 systems, all established in under 8 cycles. High Chancellor Trell stepped forward. Director Vex seems intent on creating panic. Even if these humans have advanced quickly, they are still a single-system species with limited resources. They will accept protectorate status like all emerging civilizations. Vex's scales darkened slightly, the equivalent of a human smile. With respect, High Chancellor, I believe you should review the approaching vessel's energy readings. Trell turned to the display, and his confidence visibly faltered. The human ship's power signature exceeded that of a Confederation heavy cruiser, despite being one-third the size. How? Trell began. Based on our analysis, Vex answered, they appear to have developed an energy generation method based on controlled quantum fluctuations, another theoretical dead end our scientists abandoned. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. A species that had been using chemical rockets a decade ago had not only caught up to Confederation technology, but had developed along entirely different paths that might make their technology incompatible with Confederation defenses. "They're here," announced a technician, breaking the silence. The human diplomatic vessel Unity docked with perfect precision at the Exiled orbital station. Admiral Wilson led the delegation, with Dr. Rivera and 5 other human specialists following behind. They wore simple, elegant uniforms without excessive ornamentation, a calculated choice to appear confident but not aggressive. A Confederation reception party waited in the docking bay, led by a tall, purple-skinned official who stepped forward with formal rigidity. "I am High Chancellor Trell of the Galactic Confederation. On behalf of the 523 member species, I welcome you to Exiled." Wilson nodded respectfully. "Admiral James Wilson of Earth, we appreciate your welcome, High Chancellor. This is an historic moment for both our peoples." Trell's secondary eyes narrowed slightly. "Indeed, your rapid advancement has been remarkable. The Council is eager to discuss your integration into the Confederation structure. As a newly spacefaring species, you will find our Protectorate program quite beneficial to your development." Wilson exchanged a glance with Dr. Rivera before responding. "While we appreciate the offer, High Chancellor, Earth comes to this meeting as a sovereign stellar nation, not a Protectorate applicant." "That's not how our system works, Admiral," Trell replied, a hint of condescension entering his voice. "All new species begin as protectorates. It's for your own benefit. The galaxy can be dangerous for newcomers." Wilson smiled politely. "Perhaps you misunderstand our position. Earth isn't requesting admission. We're proposing a mutual recognition treaty between equals." A low-ranking official approached Trell and whispered something that made the High Chancellor's skin fade to an even lighter purple. "What is it?" Wilson asked. Trell straightened his already imposing frame. "Our sensors have detected 3 more human vessels entering the system. You were permitted 1 diplomatic ship." "Actually," Wilson replied, "those aren't additional diplomatic vessels. They're our escort. They've been with us the entire journey, maintaining stealth protocols until now as a security measure. Standard procedure for diplomatic missions into unknown territory." A gray-skinned official stepped forward from the Confederation delegation. "You had invisible escort ships following your vessel through Confederation space. This is Director Vex of our Intelligence Division," Trell introduced reluctantly. Wilson inclined his head toward Vex. "Yes, Director. Standard security protocol. I'm sure you understand the precaution." Vex's expression remained unreadable, but something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Most prudent, High Chancellor, perhaps we should move this discussion to the Council chamber." The Grand Hall fell completely silent as Dr. Rivera finished her presentation. The holographic display above the Council table showed technology after technology the humans had developed, each following theoretical paths the Confederation had abandoned centuries or millennia ago. In summary, Rivera concluded, human thinking appears to approach problems from fundamentally different angles than Confederation species. Where your scientists see a dead end, ours might see an opportunity. This cognitive divergence explains our rapid development once we understood the basic principles we discovered from studying your monitoring signals. "You knew we were watching you?" Council member Laurel asked, genuinely curious. "We detected your observation platforms years before you shut them down," Wilson confirmed. "We couldn't understand the technology then, but we gathered enormous amounts of data. When the signals stopped, we realized we had been given an opportunity." Director Vex stepped forward. You used our own monitoring technology against us. We learned from it, Wilson corrected, and improved upon it. High Chancellor Trell had remained silent through most of the presentation, but now he spoke. Even with these advancements, Earth is still one planet with limited resources. The Confederation spans thousands of worlds across 3 galactic arms. Wilson nodded in acknowledgement. Which is why we come in peace, seeking cooperation rather than conflict. However, there's one more thing you should know. He gestured to Dr. Rivera, who activated the final part of their presentation. The hologram shifted to show 3 distinct alien species, none of which were represented in the council chamber. During our exploration, we encountered these 3 species in systems your star charts marked as uninhabited. They had been overlooked by your survey teams, possibly because their technological signatures didn't match your expected patterns. Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. Missing 3 spacefaring species was an unprecedented failure of Confederation exploration protocols. We've established peaceful relations with all 3, Wilson continued. They formed their own coalition, which now has a mutual defense treaty with Earth. The implications were clear. Earth might be one planet, but it was no longer alone. And the Confederation's assumption of complete galactic knowledge had been shattered in a single moment. Director Vex moved to stand beside High Chancellor Trell. For the first time in the meeting, Vex allowed himself a visible reaction, one that humans would recognize as a smile. I believe, Vex said quietly to Trell, this would be the moment to reconsider our assessment of Earth's threat potential. The central garden of Celaris bloomed with plants from hundreds of worlds. Admiral Wilson walked slowly beside Director Vex, both leaders taking a rare moment away from the intense negotiations that had stretched over 3 weeks. Your proposal is causing quite the stir, Admiral, Vex said, his gray scales catching the light of Celaris's twin suns. A galactic alliance instead of the Confederation. Equal representation regardless of technological development. Many elder species find these ideas disturbing. Wilson stopped beside a fountain where water flowed upward instead of down, one of the many subtle displays of Confederation technological prowess designed to impress visitors. Change is always disturbing to those who benefit from the current system, Wilson replied. But your own history shows the weakness of the Confederation model. 3 overlooked species, countless abandoned technological paths, a rigid hierarchy that stifles innovation. Vex's inner eyelids blinked slowly. You misunderstand, Admiral. I find your proposal intriguing, not disturbing. But then, I've spent my career being disturbed by things others ignored. Wilson smiled, like a primitive species that told stories about space travel they couldn't possibly achieve. Precisely. Vex gestured to a bench carved from a single crystal, inviting Wilson to sit. Tell me honestly, how did humans advance so quickly? Even with the data you gathered from our monitoring stations, the leap from chemical rockets to your current technology is unprecedented. Wilson considered his answer carefully. The truth was both simple and complex. Imagination, he finally said. Humans have always been dreamers. For thousands of years before we had the technology, we told stories about traveling to the stars. We imagined meeting aliens, building faster-than-light ships, creating new worlds. When we found evidence that aliens were real, your monitoring signals, it wasn't a shock. It was confirmation of what we had always believed. But the technical challenges were approached differently, Wilson finished. Your scientists follow logical progressions. If Path A leads to a dead end, they abandon it entirely. Humans are more stubborn. We'll try Path A from 100 different angles before giving up. And sometimes, that 100th attempt breaks through. Vex nodded slowly. A cognitive difference. Fascinating. He paused. High Chancellor Trell will never support your alliance proposal. Too much power would be lost by the elder species. And you. I warned about Earth's potential 15 cycles ago. No one listened. Vex's scales darkened slightly. The equivalent of a smile. I find it satisfying to be proven right. The Grand Council chamber was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from all 523 Confederation member species crowded the tiered seating, while diplomatic teams from Earth and the 3 newly discovered species, the Naren, the Volshi, and the Tellarites, stood at the center. The tension in the room was palpable. High Chancellor Trell took the elevated podium, his purple skin now a deep, troubled shade. This emergency session of the High Council will now decide on the proposed Galactic Alliance Charter. The proposal requires a 2/3 majority to pass. Dr. Rivera stood beside representatives from each of the 3 new species. Over the weeks of negotiation, they had formed a unified front, their combined knowledge of technologies overlooked by the Confederation, creating a powerful bargaining position. Trell continued, his voice heavy with reluctance. The terms include equal representation for all spacefaring species regardless of technological tier or territorial holdings, shared access to scientific discoveries, and a mutual defense pact. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. For many of the elder species who had enjoyed privileged positions for thousands of cycles, the proposal threatened their status. For younger, less developed species who had lived under protectorate restrictions, it offered unprecedented opportunity. Council Member Drall, one of the oldest members, raised his hand. Before we vote, I wish to address the Council. Trell nodded permission, his secondary eyes narrowed with suspicion. Drall had been showing troubling signs of supporting the humans. The ancient counselor rose slowly. I have served on this council for 142 cycles. I have seen the Confederation expand, fight wars, and absorb new species. But never have I seen us so thoroughly surprised as we have been by humanity. He gestured toward the Earth delegation. These beings have shown us the flaw in our system, our assumption that there is only one path of technological advancement, one correct way to approach the universe. By shutting down our observation of Earth to save resources, we blinded ourselves to an entirely different way of thinking. Drall turned to face the full council. I have reviewed Director Vex's original assessment from 15 cycles ago. He warned us then that humans think differently. We ignored him because it didn't fit our models. That mistake nearly cost us our position in the galaxy. The chamber had gone completely silent. Even Trell seemed unable to interrupt the elder's speech. I vote in favor of the Alliance, Drall concluded, not because humans have forced our hand with their technological surprises, but because their proposal offers something our Confederation has lost: adaptation, flexibility, and the wisdom to recognize different paths to the same stars. 3 days later, Admiral Wilson and Director Vex stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, watching as ships from dozens of worlds moved into formation for the signing ceremony. The vote had been close, nearer to the 2/3 requirement than anyone had predicted, but the Alliance Charter had passed. 37% of Confederation species voted against the Alliance. Vex noted, they will not accept this change easily. Wilson nodded. Change never comes without resistance, but more than 60% saw the opportunity in cooperation. Because humans demonstrated technologies that could potentially threaten Confederation dominance, Vex pointed out, fear is a powerful motivator. As is hope, Wilson countered. Many younger species voted for the Alliance because it offers them a voice they never had in the Confederation. Below them, on Xilaris itself, construction had already begun on the new Alliance headquarters, a symbolic placement on the former Confederation capital world. There's still one question you haven't answered, Admiral, Vex said, turning to face Wilson directly. During your expansion, before we discovered you, you found evidence of our military capabilities, our defensive systems, our weaknesses. You could have struck first, established dominance through force. Why didn't you? Wilson smiled. Another human trait, Director. For all our stories about meeting aliens, most of them end with cooperation, not conquest. We'd rather build something together than rule alone. Vex considered this an admirable sentiment. I hope it proves sustainable. That's why I've recommended you for the position of Alliance Security Director. Wilson revealed. Someone needs to keep a careful eye on all of us, humans included. For the first time, Vex showed genuine surprise. You trust me with such responsibility. After I spent years monitoring your world. Because of it, Wilson answered. You saw our potential when everyone else dismissed us. That kind of foresight will be valuable in the Alliance. As they spoke, a sleek vessel approached the station, the first official diplomatic ship from the Volshi, one of the species humans had discovered. Behind it came ships from worlds that had been Confederation protectorates for centuries, now full Alliance members. The irony isn't lost on me, Vex said quietly. By shutting down communication with Earth, we created the very conditions that allowed you to surpass our expectations. A single budget decision changed the galaxy forever. Wilson watched as the ships assembled, representing a new beginning for thousands of worlds. The greatest miscalculations often have the most profound consequences. On the main viewing screen, the newly elected Alliance Council appeared, a diverse group including humans, former Confederation leaders, and representatives from species that had been overlooked or underestimated. Their first unanimous act had been simple but profound. A galaxy-wide declaration that no developing world would ever again be abandoned to isolation simply to save resources. As the signing ceremony began, Wilson couldn't help but smile at the final line of the Alliance Charter, words suggested by Dr. Rivera, but embraced by representatives from hundreds of worlds. United in diversity, stronger through difference, we reach for the stars together. The moment the Confederation realized Earth's true potential had become the moment the galaxy found a new path forward, one where being different wasn't a weakness to overcome, but a strength to be celebrated.